Welcome to the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes, showing you how to do wholesaling deals consistently without having to go on seller appointments. Learn the key tips and strategies that Brandon's students use to find deeply discounted properties that are pennies on the dollar, all while avoiding wear and tear on their vehicle, body, and freedom. Whether you're looking for your first deal or your next deal, it's time to send more offers with your host, Brandon Barnes.
Hey, Sam, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here.
Brandon, it's an honor, man. Thanks so much for having me. Super excited to chat.
Yeah, and look, Happy New Year. I'm going to kind of timestamp this convo, but like right after the new year,
2024.
I'm sure you got big plans. I do as well. But right now, look, from everything we talked about pre-show, everything I've heard about you, you are the king of co-living, right? And I want you to break that down and what that means to the listeners.
Yeah, man, it's co-living is really, first of all, I'm honored that you call me the king of co-living. I on my Instagram, I have the co-living guy. And someone the other day, it was funny, they were looking over my Instagram and they're like, you're the king of co-living. Yeah. They called me and I was like, I don't think I'm the king of anything. But the co-living guy works and I'll take co-living king from someone like you, man. So that's awesome.
Where we're going.
Yeah, so co-living is really a relatively new term, but it's really gaining a lot of traction. Obviously, anybody that lives in the United States, I know you're in Atlanta, so you live in, an area that's seen rent growths that have been way higher and disproportionate to income growths, right? So rent grows and housing costs have all increased tremendously ever since COVID, and then obviously they've been on a trajectory to increase. And so, yeah, we're kind of seeing people not be able to afford nearly as much house anymore, seeing people not be able to afford apartments anymore. And we're just pricing a lot of people that make $20,000 to $50,000 a year out of the market, right? And I don't know what it's like in Atlanta, but I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you need $1,500 a month plus utilities to live in a decent area in a studio apartment. So you're talking 20 grand a year, 24 grand a year just to actually live in a decent place. Like, that's not cool. And so co-living is this idea where you're sharing housing, right? I think before we clicked record, you said, is that like rooming housing? And I was like, well, we don't like to use that term. It's rooming housing. You kind of think of it as dingy, old, broken down, just shove as many people as you possibly can into a house. And really what I'm here to promote is something where people are sharing a house. So there could be 6, 7, 8, 9. I know that may sound crazy to some of your listeners, maybe even 10. Like one of the houses we just launched was 10 people sharing a house, but It's done in a way where imagine you walk through the front doors and you go, wait, is this an Airbnb? Is this like a luxury Airbnb? It's got that vibe. It's got that feeling that it's nice. It's well done. It's in a good neighborhood. Parking has been thought through and taken care of. Everybody's got their individual locks on their door. They have the individual cabinet, their individual space in their refrigerator. So just it's room rentals done really, really, really well is really what co-living is. And it's done with this idea of a community. Like, hey, we're getting, my company, what we do is we bring good people together and they rent these homes. So we manage these homes. My company, I have a company that manages these room rentals or co-living homes. We have a company that acquires these. We have a company that rehabs these. And then my wife and I also invest in these as well.
Love it.
So that was a long answer to your question, but that's a little bit about co-living.
That's super helpful. And to your point, I mean, that was the first thing that came to my mind, rooming house. We actually just wholesaled a property that was a rooming house, and it was an absolute nightmare. It was a mess of a house. And it was, I had no clue why anybody would even pay for a room in this place, but that's how it can get sometimes. And I know that there's companies that are somewhat promoting this as a business opportunity. There's hat splits out there, and I know we'll get to that. But I'm glad that you at least walked me through what co-living is to you. I want to understand, how the economics of it all work. How did you get that first one? And was this always the path for you as a real estate investor? Because I know that you wanted to start real estate investing early on, but was it in this niche or did you stumble across it?
Yeah, man, I'll kind of start with something that I think is a really bold promise to some of your listeners. I truly believe, and this is kind of the sword I'm dying on, so to speak. Like I truly believe I've been investing in real estate now for almost a decade and a half. And I've seen, my friends invest in, and myself, I've invested in other niches. I do own a commercial building. I've played around in some multifamily stuff. I've played around in some commercial stuff. And so I want to just start off with this like bold promise that I believe co-living real estate, doing this shared housing is the best and most stable and fastest way for the average person to achieve financial freedom through real estate today. So I'll say that even a little stronger. I believe co-living is the fastest way to achieve financial freedom in the real estate market today, and the most stable. The only thing that will get
I'm gonna drop a bomb for that, because that you just dropped a bomb. That was very impactful. That's a big.
I was like, "What the hell is that?" Got some static on here.
That's a big statement. I mean, hey, that this is the best path or the best tool for a real estate investor, for the average real estate investor, to really build wealth through co-living. That's okay. I like it, and it kind of makes sense, because everybody wants to do multifamily, but multifamily is somewhat less attainable, I guess, when you're getting starting, and you can find a single family property. So yeah, let me not stop you.
So imagine, you're on the right track, Brandon. Like, imagine multifamily returns where you have one roof, you've got, covering, this one asset. So you're getting those multifamily returns. You're diversifying your risk by having multiple people pay you on one asset, right? Like, if one person moves out, you're still cash flowing. If I have a house and I launch and it's got 8 tenants in it, or 8 people in it, if 2 people move out, I'm fine. If 3 people move out, I'm still fine. If 4 people move out, I'm still paying my bills, right? But you get single family debt, right? So you're able to put this thing, unlike a lot of multifamily, you're able to put this thing on a 30-year fixed mortgage. Now, I'll take it even to another level. Imagine you're a brand new real estate investor and you want to go get your first house. You can get a house with zero. If you're like, there are loan programs out there where you can get a house with 0% down. There's VA loans if you're in the military. There's a company out there. There's a lot of these smaller credit unions. There, one of my staff members just got approved for a 0% down load through a state employee's federal credit union. So her brother is a state employee. So similar to like a VA if you're in the military, and they offer 0% down. Now they have to be primary loans. You have to live in them. But this was how I got started. I would buy a house. Now, I didn't have the ability to get 0% down loans, but most banks out there, if you tell them, hey, I'm going to live in this house, you can get 3% down, right? There's no multifamily buildings you can get for 3% down, by the way. Right. No bank will give you a commercial loan without 20% down, right? So now you're talking, you have to have hundreds and but anybody can save what on a $200,000 house, 3% is $6,000. On a $300,000 house, 3% is $9,000. Like, we're not talking ginormous amounts of money here.
I love that.
So you go in, you can buy a house, you can live in one of the rooms, and you can rent out the other rooms. And then as soon as 1 year hits, because you're legally supposed to live in that home, if you tell the bank it's a primary residence, you're supposed to legally live in that home 1 year. And then you just move on to the next home. And then I would always buy homes with the co-living buy box, which we can cover today if you want.
Yeah, definitely.
The co-living buy box in mind. And so I did that for my first 5 homes, and I was in my 20s and I was making more money than my dad ever made. And I just had these 5 properties that and I was working a job, but I was quote unquote financially free. Now, granted, since then my expenses have gone way up. I got married. I like, but in that stage of my life, I was like, wow, like this is crazy. I thought I had to work. My dad will probably never retire. Right.
Yeah.
But like, so that was a path for me to do that. Now, I know there's some listeners out there that are like, cool, Sam, that's awesome, but I'm not single. I've got kids. There's no way I'm not going to live in a room, rent out other rooms. So what you can do is you can still do the strategy. If you're here and you don't want to live with anybody, you can do the exact strategy I just shared, but I call it advanced house hacking is really what it is. You live in the home for a year, you buy it with the co-living buy box in mind, and then you buy the next primary. And as you go buy the next primary, you rent out that house. And now you're always 1 year ahead of the houses. So you have if these, on average, these homes produce $2,000 to $4,000 net cash flow per month. That's what we're seeing across the United States. So let's do some quick, and again, I'm kind of getting into the weeds here. Maybe you don't want to go this, but I'll just do some quick math so people really understand the statement that I just.
And I say that because, when people talk about, seller finance and these creative finance deals, and they're just trying to get $400, $500 cash flow, like this blows that out of the water. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. The only thing that beats what we do in cash flow is Airbnb. That's the only thing. Like, there are Airbnbs that will do more, but there's downsides to that. You're basically right. So like the tenants that live in my home, this is home for them. I've had tenants stay with me 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. So this is like home. This is the way they live. And as crazy as that sounds, Brandon, to us Americans, I was actually on a big podcast called Bigger Pockets, and I was sharing this. It's a big real estate podcast. I was sharing this message of co-living, and someone reached out to me from the podcast, and he was in Europe. He lives in Berlin, Germany, and he goes, "Hey, Sam." He kind of got on me when he first called me. I set up this little 5-minute call with him or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, man, like you're trying to promote this co-living thing as a new thing. It's not." He was like, "It's not new." I was like, "Yeah, but it's like new to us in America." Yeah, right, exactly.
In Europe, the hostels and everything. I've been to Germany before.
Yeah.
And that is very much the norm out there, not so much here.
Exactly. Because things are more expensive there. The inequality, it's more expensive there. And so he literally goes on exactly what you're saying, Brand. He goes on to tell me, he says, "Man, we live like this here. This is like normal for us. Like living in a room is mostly how all the millennials live." Yeah. Like you don't buy a house in Berlin, Germany. Like you don't. Like you're going to spend $1 million and like that's just, you don't have it. He's like, so he goes on to tell me some crazy story about how he runs a software company and he couldn't get any software engineers to move to Berlin because everything was so expensive. He couldn't offer them enough money for them to move. So he finally started building co-living buildings. And as part of their salary package, he'd give them a room to live in. Like that was part of his. So anyway, it just goes on. But I think that's creeping across the pond, if you will, just because we're headed that direction.
Well, look, you're the trailblazer. I think you're one of the trailblazers that are doing this. I know we're still gonna get to the Pat Split piece of it because I know they're one of the bigger companies that you hear and know outside of your mom and pop that are doing a similar type of real estate investing model. But I think I just want to touch on one of the things for the listener that you mentioned. And when you say that some of these folks are staying in this room and this is home and they're doing it for 8 years, there's a reason for that, guys. And that's because Sam has put these houses together that are super nice. It's not the average rooming house. So tell me a little bit about your buy box and tell me about the experience of one of these homes and how nice are these things? Like, why would somebody stay in a room for years and years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, man. I appreciate you saying that because we try to differentiate ourselves from that. And we try to differentiate ourselves from like boarding houses or rooming houses. And for that very reason, we want people to recognize that this is home. So I think you have to understand my background before just a little bit for you to understand why co-living is so normal to me. I was homeschooled, raised with 8 brothers and sisters and 2 parents in a 1,900 square foot house for most of my upbringing. Oh, wow. So imagine 10 people living in 1,900 square feet. So when I went out into the world and I thought about renting rooms, I was like, guys, this is normal. Even when I tell people today, like, hey, I've like our latest house we just launched, it's like 3,200 square feet. So it's big, but it's 10 rooms. 10 people share this house. And it's in a great area. It filled up in like 3 to 4 weeks filled up. And people are like, what? Like, how do you get 10 people to share a house together? Well, like, to me, I'm like, that's how I was raised. Like, that's not how everybody else was raised. Like, it was just my mindset, right? It was just like, co-living is like very normal to me. It's not awkward. It's not weird to me. That's how I was raised. So, I think how you get people to stay there is you just have an amazing product. So first of all, like big house in a great area helps. Like obviously a non-HOA neighborhood, like we don't want to deal with any of that. Same like any Airbnb investors that are listening to you were like, yeah, like you just no that's the first button you click in Zillow is no HOA if you want to buy something, right? And then what ends up happening is you just do a great job on the interior. So we don't furnish any of the bedrooms because and actually this came from the guy that called me from Berlin, Germany. He said, Sam, in Europe, and here's the quote, "The room is the new apartment here." And I thought, wow, maybe that's not the American dream, but we have a problem. Let's solve it. And here in America, I believe we're headed more in that direction. And if I can provide a great room for someone, I want them to think of that as their apartment. So I don't want it to be furnished. I want them to furnish. It's like, hey man, here's your apartment. It's a room. It's smaller. You have a shared common space, but like, hey, make it how you want it. One time I had a guy change out all the light bulbs in the fan because we have like ceiling fans in all the rooms to like these blue neon lights. And I remember like walking by his room one time, like, oh, it's weird. And then I got a little upset. I was like, why is he like changing the light bulbs? And I was like, oh no, that's perfect. That's his apartment. It's his room.
That's his thing.
Right? So the thought process is basically, if the room is the new apartment, then I'm not going to furnish, but I furnish the common areas. So we'll come in and we'll set it up to be like a co-working space. So we'll have desks. We'll have a place for them to eat. They'll have an individual cabinet for their food. They'll have an individual space in the refrigerator for their space. So everything's labeled for whatever room number they're in. We provide professional cleanings throughout the month, where we'll have someone come in, clean all the shared bathrooms, clean the common area. We don't clean their rooms, but we'll clean the common area, and we'll make this place look really great. We have assigned parking when assigned parking needs to, hey man, you're going to be parking on the street here. You're going to be parking here, so that everyone has like a parking spot. They don't have to worry about just parking everywhere, bothering the neighbors or bothering the neighborhood. And so it's little systems like that just took me a decade to kind of figure out. We even, created a tenant dispute system. We have headphone hours, where, like, hey, at 10 o'clock during the weekdays, like, you got to just go to Bluetooth. You can watch stuff as late as you want, but you got to put it on Bluetooth, or 11 o'clock on weekends. So systems like that for a house, for a community like this to run really, really well. And the one thing I'm really proud that we did is we started offering a gift card. We presented a manual. I don't know how else to say it other than, imagine like Tony Robbins created a personal development manual on meditation and goal setting and physical health and exercise. And we created it and we give it to every tenant. We call them members. So every member. And we say, hey, if you fill it out, and there's all these exercises in it, then we will give you a $100 gift card. And I literally just got an email just last week from my property manager who was like, a member was saying, hey, thank you so much. This manual has helped me create a daily gratitude practice. Like, really appreciate the community you're trying to create. So that type of stuff that we get to do is amazing. And when I think we just care and we want to scale it, but we also care. And I think people feel that it's a great place to live. And look, let's just be honest, man. All that stuff that I just said is kind of BS when you also just compare, like, it's cheap. Like, all your utilities are included. Like, those are all the little add-ons that I mentioned, but all the utilities are included. You're in a great location, in a great room with a furnished area. And like, it's $800 a month, maybe $900, maybe $1,000 if you have a private room. But that location would probably be double that, if they had to pay for a studio.
Love it. Quick question that just popped in my mind. For the members, do they all have to be single individuals, any families, any one extra or couples?
It's single room occupancy. So if someone says, hey, I only, you got to rent 2 rooms if it's you and a significant other.
Okay. Got it.
Is basically what it boils down to. We're mainly focused on one person per room.
Okay.
If it is a separate entrance and there's tons of parking, then we'll kind of think about it differently, but that's normally how we do it.
Awesome. Yeah. Love it. All right. Well, let's get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of this, because you kind of talked about the buy box. You gave me a few items, and what I want to piggyback this with is rules and regulations, and is this available anywhere? Do you have to check ordinances and whatnot? But also tell me a little bit more about how the actual property is set up. Do you just use the rooms that are in the home, maybe your ideal property? Is it all of the rooms and then you create additional rooms within the building? And then let's talk about the regulations as well.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things in a buy box for a co-living home is just the size of the home. Like, if you can buy a bigger home, usually the better. And then obviously the other buy box, and something I teach, is just teaching people how to underwrite these deals to make sure they make money. So you can have a smaller co-living home. Like, I had a bunch of 1,500 and 1,700, 1,800 square foot co-living homes. They could just only be 4 or 5 rooms.
Right.
So it really just depends on how comfortable you are with kind of creating more rooms. But absolutely, I mean, in real estate, we're taught this concept of what's the highest and best use of a plot of land, for example, or what's the highest and best use of your living room. If no one uses the living room, then the highest and best use is for that to house someone, if housing is an issue in your community. And in most major cities today, housing is an issue. Like, it's an affordability issue. There's a supply issue. And so one of the things I want people to think about is that there's enough bedrooms in the United States right now to solve affordable housing. There's enough bedrooms to solve every homeless person. There's enough bedrooms. We're just not using it to its highest and best use. So if I walk into a home and I see a dining room instead of having a dining room and a living room, absolutely, we're going to take space and we're going to We're going to put up a wall, put up a door, maybe add a bathroom. We're going to create an extra bedroom or as many bedrooms as we can. Now, one of the things that we differ a little bit from, say, pad split is pad split won't allow you. They don't want you to have a common space because they believe common space causes issues. For me, all of our homes have a common space. We won't even take it under management unless it has a common space. And the reason for that is because we want a community feel to these homes, right? We don't want every square inch to be cut up. A lot of times we'll take the garages and convert them to a really nice, like kind of hangout area, put carpet tiles down, put an HVAC system in it, and we'll do something really nice, put a pool table in there and allow people to use that as the common space. That way we can use more space in the house for rooms.
Got it.
Now, when it comes to regulations, I mean, we could spend the whole conversation about this, because it is a nuanced subject. And I think I have to just say this as a disclaimer, like there'd be no way I could tell you, especially for listeners all over the United States, like, hey, it definitely is legal in your area. Because every jurisdiction, a lot of zoning laws are very local. And I just don't have the knowledge of every local jurisdiction, right? Like, but I can tell you kind of some of the ways how we operate. Like, what are the good faith ways that we operate? And one of the largest ways that we operate is that we set our business up to be a membership-based organization versus a tenant-landlord type relationship. So Brandon, let's say you come and you're like, I want to rent a room. I'd be like, cool, you got to become a member of our club. You know, I'm using the word club. It's not the actual word we use, but you have to become a member of our organization called ABC Membership Organization. And then I'm just going to use my fist here as an example. Let's say this is the LLC, the company that is the membership organization. Okay. So you actually join this company. And the reason, let me pause here for a second. The reason I'm explaining this is because, you know, a lot of jurisdictions, some jurisdictions will have like, hey, you can only have so many unrelated people living in a home. Like that's a lot of where people get tripped up on the co-living thing. They're like, oh no, my city's got only 3 unrelated people can live in a home. Well, first, what you have to recognize is most of those laws are very, very outdated. Most of them were designed to keep undocumented immigrants, like 50 of them, from living in a house together. And another one was to keep prostitution houses out of neighborhoods. And so that was the zoning that they created. These are very old laws. They weren't really created to regulate kind of what we're doing, which is like a professional room rental type of a system.
Got it.
And so anyway, we've got this organization. Brandon, you come in, you join organization, and then this organization, as a company, and in the United States, a company is considered one person. It leases this home. So let's say here's my home, and this organization with a bunch of members is going to lease this home. And so technically, I'm leasing my home to one person. I'm leasing it to one company. And that company happens to have a bunch of members that get to use the house. They pay their dues and they get to use the house. That is a little bit overly simplistic. And I want to just be very transparent to say I'm not a lawyer. I have smart lawyers on my team. We've copied a lot of how pad split's gotten around this. But, you know, there is a way that we operate that has good faith to it. That's like, we're doing it in a way that is possible to do it.
I love that. That's amazing. Just the whole, you know, that setup is really great, because that was going to be my next question. Like, you know, take me through your process of, all right, you know, I want to purchase the next property. What are the first things that you're going to do? And maybe you can talk about the most recent one that you just acquired. Is it you have somebody on the acquisitions team that's scouring properties? Put yourself in the shoes of somebody that's listening that says, hey, I want to do exactly what Sam's doing.
Right.
What would you tell that person to go out and do?
Yeah, great. Okay, so you go to Zillow, you go to your area. I'm going to talk about, that's a great question. That's a super specific and great question, actually, by the way. So I'm going to go to my area. I'm going to go to Zillow. I'm going to circle the area I know I want to invest in, because on Zillow, you can do the little tracing of the thing. I'll break it down real specific. So I'm going to trace the area I know. Hey, I know this area. It's within 30 minutes of a downtown, or at least it's within, in Charlotte, at least 20 to 30 minutes of a good employer where people are working. Maybe there's an Amazon facility where a bunch of people are going to be working at. Like, I want to be, 15 to 30 minutes drive time from those big hubs. Then I'm going to go click and I'm going to filter a bunch of stuff out. I'm going to click no HOAs. I'm going to filter out any homes that are smaller than 2,000 square feet because I want size. And then the other thing I'll filter out is, doesn't matter how many bedrooms or bathrooms, because I can add bedrooms, I can add bathrooms. And then I'm just going to probably put, $450,000 or less, right? And that's going to give me a certain number of homes in my market. And I'm going to look through those. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm trying to identify like, hey, is there enough parking? So I'll go to Google Earth, Google Street View, kind of bop in. Okay, wow, look, that's got a driveway. Wow, look, street parking is legal. And I can see it because like 4 people are parked on the street. Or I'm going to kind of look for that. And I'm going to look for something that's nice enough. And when I say nice enough, I mean something that I could go put a wall and a door in. And it's not like this open concept home where I'm really kind of messing with the home. I'm going to look for something that's a little bit more easier to kind of mess with. So nice enough is kind of my technical term that I use. Look for something in a B neighborhood, maybe A minus, but probably B plus, B minus is kind of where I'm going to sit. No HOA, make sure I have enough parking. And then I'm going to go get a floor plan of that home. And the floor plan is going to allow me to kind of trace out where I think the extra bedrooms are going to be. Nice. Right. And then I can look at a floor plan. There's an app people can use called Cubicasa. It's Cubicasa, and it's free. And you can just walk through one time with your cell phone, and it spits out a floor plan. I don't even know how it does it. It spits out measurements too, and it says like we're not always accurate, but it's an amazing app. We use it on every home. My acquisitions team uses it on every home. They send it to me, and they say, Sam. Yeah, it's awesome. They say, Sam, here's where we think we can get 3 more bedrooms. It's a 5-bedroom now. We think we can get 8. And then I run it through a spreadsheet. I go, okay, here's my electric is going to cost this. My water is going to cost this. My mortgage at current interest rates are going to cost this. Boom, 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 boom. Does it spit out the cash flow I need to at 8 bedrooms? And of course, I know my area. I know what I can get. We'll talk about that in a moment, but I know I can get per room. And if it gives me what I need is 15 to 20% cash on cash return. That's everybody's different, but in my stage in my career, that's what I'm looking for. Then yeah, I'm going to be cool with that. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. We're going to acquire the property. We're going to do the little rehab, and then I'm going to turn it over to my property management company. We're going to fill it. Now, so that's kind of a very high level view. There's more nuances to every one of those pieces, but that's a high level view of exactly what I would do if you said, find me a co-living property in Charlotte right now. Here's the crazy part. Notice I didn't say door knock. Notice I didn't say cold call. Notice I didn't say all these homes. And by the way, we have an acquisition team that buys these for other investors. I said 15 to 20% cash on cash return on the MLS. Like, we're buying homes. Today I just put one under contract off the MLS. Super rare that a wholesaler brings me a home because I'm not a big rehabber. I'm just not. It's not my superpower. It's not my super skill. And today I did just put a home under contract that I think will be great. It's like 2,800 square feet. It's in this really beautiful area. And it's right next to a greenway. I'm like, we bought. We're going to buy. But that's rare. That's like the second time I've ever done that in my whole career. So what's crazy and cool about this is it's easy. It's still easy to find homes that cash flow in today's market on market. That's
amazing. That is amazing. Well, but there's that other piece of making sure, I mean, yes, it doesn't have an HOA. Is it because you also know the legality of if it would work? Is it because you know your market, and if you're buying in Charlotte and there's no HOA, you should be good to go? Like, and I'm asking this question as if this was somebody else that's listening and said they wanted to do it in their market. Yeah. What's the other boxes that you would have them check to make sure that they could proceed with this purchase?
But you're kind of talking about specifically from a legal standpoint, though, right?
Yeah, just to make sure, no hot water. Like, do they need set up a similar LLC formation and become a have a document that would play that out?
So in a perfect world, I would see if a company like Pad Split or Bungalow, or another one is called Common or Homeroom. Those are probably the 4 big tech companies leading this charge. I'd see if they're there. And if they're there, then they've kind of know that the city is friendly to it. And a lot of cities are way more friendly to this than they are to Airbnbs. The other thing you could do is you could call, like I have a friend who's got 2 of these homes. He became financially free off 2 of these homes in LA, quit a 6-figure corporate job. Oof. And he just called the city, and literally here's what he asked them. He said, I'm going to have 9 people sharing a house. Are there restrictions against 9 people sharing a house? And they said, yes, there are. He goes, do you enforce them? He goes, and this was LA County. He says, they said, no, housing's such an issue here. We do not enforce them. Mm-hmm. And so He built his 2 homes and he went there, right? And so I think you could, if you really wanted to be safe, you could go and say, hey, you could call the city and just say, hey, how many unrelated people are allowed to live in a home? Now, granted, I'll be honest, in Charlotte, the number is 5 or 6, depending on which part of the Charlotte you're in. So we are exceeding that. And I'm fine with that because I have a membership agreement system set up. And so that's what I would recommend people do. Now, you could do it yourself if you're going to self-manage, or, if you use a company like myself or Pad Split to manage the properties, then like they're going to already have a membership system set up because that's how they legally do this. So you either got to kind of figure it out with a lawyer. I coach people through it. If people are like really interested, like I want to do this in my area, like I coach people how to set up that membership system. And my lawyer spent a lot of time, and we modeled a lot after the Pad Split model. So from a legal standpoint, those are a couple of things that I would do. The other thing that I would do, and this is a great tip, is I would always test. People, there's Facebook groups out there. Like I run one of the largest ones. It's called Coliving Investors Community. It's not a paid group at all. It's just a free group. And you can go in there and you can just ask, is anybody doing co-living in Boise, Idaho? And like people be like, I am. So there's like people doing it everywhere. And then you can just talk to, that's honestly what I would do, is I would just talk to them like, hey, how are the restrictions? Where do I need to be? I've just talked to those other people about it and kind of see what they've done. The other thing you'll want to do if you're ever going into a new market, if you want to start it in, like, let's say, Brandon, you want to start in Atlanta right now, is I would just go and I would run some test ads before you buy a home. Now, if there's other people doing co-living in your city, I would try to figure out what they're charging, because you need to be able to know what you can get per room. So you go see what Pad Split's charging. You go on Craigslist and see what other people are charging per room. Now, if you use my model, you're going to be able to be at the very high end of what everybody else is charging, because it's a more premium product. You have common space. You're providing these professional cleanings. It's a really great product. Now, but if you don't know anybody that's doing co-living in that area, what we teach people to do is just run an ad. Don't put an address. Use some photos. Like it's kind of a fake test ad, but like, right. And don't ghost everybody. But when people respond, you just say, hey, I'm actually creating a waiting list for this home. Please fill out this form and I'll put you at the top of the waiting list. You don't put an address. You're not, you don't steal the neighbor's photos. You're like, I actually give some students my photos of a co-living home just so they can post something. And you see like how much you actually do real market data in that area. And you say, wow, I posted a room with some decent photos for $800 and I got 100 hits in 4 days. Like, okay, there's solid demand in that town. And usually I use this strategy when someone's like, I want to go into this little town. It's 50,000 people. And I'm like, I don't know anybody doing co-living in, one of the towns I went into is called Asheville, North Carolina, or Black Mountain, North Carolina. It's like, you probably know because you're in Atlanta. It's like this touristy town. I was like, I don't know. I launched an 8-bedroom home there and boom, it filled up in a week. But but only because I knew the area and I had data on what people would pay. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone into a smaller town like that. I mean, Black Mountain's like 8,000 people, right? So those are a couple of tips for someone that's like, okay, Sam, I get it. If I can produce great cash flow, like I'll do this model. But what do I have to do to prove that it'll work before I go buy a $200,000-$400,000 house? Well, you run ads and you look at what other people are charging in that area, and then you can run your numbers to say, okay, well, 8 rooms at $800 a pop, that's $6,400. And that's very common for us to find a $300,000 or $400,000 house that will gross at least $6,000 to $7,000. And now we're hitting what we call the 2% rule, which is we're renting that home for 2% of the purchase price every month. And the golden rule in real estate used to be 1%.
1% rule, right? Yeah. You're crushing it.
Yeah, and there's nuances. But there's nuances. You get it's a little bit more management. You are going to be paying for some utilities, right? So but you have to, as long as that goes into your pro forma, your little spreadsheet that you figure out, like you're good.
Love it. Awesome. 2 quick follow-up questions that I just had. One, how quickly can you turn one of these around? Yeah. And I say that based off we had a property that we just wholesaled in McDonough, Georgia, really nice property. I think it would have been great for something like this. And I was really considering renovating, but I would have needed to do the entire basement. It was going to be super expensive. So I went on and just sold it, $30K deal, really quick and easy. But something like this, had I said, hey, let me do the co-living model, how quickly could you turn around a property like this and get it up and running from the moment you say, hey, let's move forward with the purchase?
Yeah, it really depends on how much rehab is needed. So a home that all it needs is like walls and doors and doesn't need like a rehab, then like, that's 30 days worth of work probably to come in, maybe maybe take a half bath, make it a full, put up some walls, doors, paint, maybe a little bit, and boom, and then get it set up for co-living. So furnish the common areas, put the individual locks on the doors, like really make it a nice place. That's a month at least, maybe a month and a half. And then you need about 45 days to fill it. So you're 3 months from full. Let's call it 4 months if you give yourself a buffer for rehab stuff or whatever, maybe little things that need to happen there. But that's what I would say right off the bat is you're 3 to 4 months out. Now, if you're probably more of a rehab guy than I am, Brandon. So if you're like, oh, it's a big rehab and there's siding that needs to be replaced and the kitchen.
Bro, we do the lipstick only hotel stuff.
Oh,
like,
nice.
I'll clean it up, clean it out, maybe paint and carpet. I've done a few major renovations, but I try to stay away from them. It's
Me
just
too.
so many other ways to make money in real estate without getting like knee deep in full renovations. That I stay away from them as much as possible.
That's great.
The other quick question was just the tenant vetting process. Like, how in depth are you vetting these tenants? Background checks, like that's something that can trip up, any landlord or anybody that wants to be in the rental game. How deep are you vetting? Are you doing an extra layer of vetting because they're going to be living in a co-living space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Traditional things that a normal landlord would do, we do. Background check, credit check, income verification, making sure they make 3 times the monthly rent. And then on top of that, we send them a little video that explains the co-living concept and basically says, here's who we're for. If you're this type of person, this is who we're for. If you're this type of person, like move on. So we kind of vet them through this little like explainer video that we make them watch. And then we vet them with a super solid set of house rules that they have to initial every one. And then we do an in-person. We still are currently, we may have to do away with this as we scale bigger, but right now we're still doing in-person showing. So we get to kind of have a vibe check is what I would say. I know that's very not, but like, yeah, if they show up and they're smoking a joint and
it's important, especially in this model.
So like for this model, we'll do a vibe check. And then we also have this ability. I think one of the things that people have to do with this model is you have to have the ability to remove someone that is breaking the house rules. So we write it in where we can terminate someone's membership. If they're breaking the house rules or something in there, we can just be like, hey, and we'll give them a week or two, a couple weeks to get out. Having that written into whatever agreements you use is very important for this model, right? Otherwise, in a normal single family house, you're going to be going through the court system. You're going to be evicting them per usual. You're going to be going through whatever your jurisdiction's laws are. In co-living, you have a little bit more freedom. And what we found is, by the way, I've done in 15 years of doing this, or almost 15 years of doing this, I think we've had 5 evictions. Wow. Period. Because it doesn't really lend, like people don't really squat in this model. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of social pressure from the other tenant or other members, right? So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Good stuff. Look, well, I wanted to, go move on to the Deal Diaries section of the podcast, and I'm sure you have an amazing story, or probably a bunch of them. Different situations, dealing with the co-living model. But any deal that you have, anything that comes to mind as a great story, we'd love to hear kind of how one of these deals work in your world.
Yeah. I think probably the best thing I could do is maybe tell you a tenant story or two. That's just kind of like, I think these stories have great morals and points to them too, in what I'm trying to share. So when I first started doing this, my first home was like 4-bedroom co-living home here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I didn't have any leases. And I remember I raised the rent from like $7 to $7.75 per month. And the first guy that comes in is like, I can pay the rent. No lease, no background check, no income verification, no nothing. Cause I was very new at landlording, right? And I was just like, he said he could pay the rent. So he gives me like the first half, and this guy never pays me a dime beyond that. So I'm like trying to get him out. I'm trying to push him out. And at this time in my life, I was big into Tony Robbins. Yeah. And so I would get up early in the morning and I would do this and I lived in this house. This is back when I lived in one of the primary residences, and I would bounce on this little trampoline and I would like shout my affirmations and be like, I'm powerful, I'm strong. I can see it. And this guy decided to like just start picking on me for that. So he would wake me up. And again, I didn't have a way to kick me up, but he would wake me up by like banging on my door like 2 or 3 a.m. And he would just say the weirdest stuff. I don't know if he was high or if he was coming back drunk or whatever. He didn't seem like he drank or was high at all. But he would come back and he'd be like, I know what your vice is. Like, I know you idolize Tony Robbins. You will never be him. And he was just like, it was like this negative force. And like, it got so comical that I would like wait for his knock on my door. And again, it's probably scaring some people away from coliving. They're like, oh my God. But like, I did it all wrong. And I would just start recording like the things that he would say. And I would just sit there with my door open because I'd open the door sometimes for him and just be like, what do you want? And, just so that was a story about, and he would be like, I know what your, and then one day he walks in and says, I know what your vice is. And I remember this time I was a little superstitious in my life. I'm not that way anymore, but I was a little superstitious. And I was like, wait, what's my vice? Like, I'm not drinking. I don't do these things. I was like, he's like, I know what vice is. Your vice is going to kill you. And it was just a really negative, like super dramatic tenant story. And I was like calling the police and trying to get him out. And they were like, well, show me the lease. And I think the lesson of the story is, like, if you're going to do something like this, if you're going to do a model that's a little, it's cutting edge, right? You're going to get higher cash flow, but you're also in what I call a blue ocean. And blue ocean is like, not everybody's there yet. Not all the systems have worked out. And so I had to create a lot of these systems. And now I share those systems with other people. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting.
Getting that guy out.
Man, I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but I was like thinking about locking the breaker box. And I was like, I know there's 2 breakers to his room. I'm just going to turn off those 2 breakers, lock the breaker box so he can't do it and do it. Now, thankfully, I didn't do that. He ended up leaving like eventually on his own, thank God. But it took him like a month longer than it should have, basically.
Wow. That's an amazing story. Good stuff. And guys, and I want to let this be known. I probably should have said it even sooner. To your point earlier of, if you're thinking about doing something like this, you can reach out to Sam and his team. Him and his team will help you set up one of these houses. Not only that, you're doing some coaching if they want to do it themselves. And a lot of experience, over 150 doors active right now. Sam, this has been an incredible
300 actually. I own 150 personally, but we just hit 300 doors active right now.
Oh my God. Good. That's amazing. I'm going to give you a air horn for that. And look, we learned so much, exactly how the model works. Some of the things that you need to think about when you're going into this space, even how to go out and find properties like this. You just gave us a ton of great information. But look, I can't let you go without putting you through the lightning round. Are you ready for that?
Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
Ready. Love it.
So look, I got a series of rapid fire questions for you. You don't know the question. I don't know your answer. So just say the very first thing that comes to your mind. What's one book that's been instrumental to your growth as a real estate investor?
Surrender Experiment.
That's a good one. I still haven't finished it. I feel bad that I haven't finished that book. I've picked it up a few times.
I can't think of the author's name right now. He also writes a book called The Untethered Soul that's really good.
Yep.
I can't think of the author's name, but anyway, it's very popular in the business world. And
Brian Singer or something. It's a well-known book, guys. If you go to Amazon, you can find it.
Michael Singer. That's Michael Singer.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Who, if you could have drinks or coffee with any one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Whew. Wow. It would probably just be Tony Robbins.
I was about to guess that.
Yeah, for me, he was like a second father figure to me growing up, and I've shaken his hand, but I've never had a conversation with him before. And so I think for me, just getting to thank him for how he's contributed to my life, how much he's taught me from a distance, from his videos, from his things, from going to a lot of his seminars. I would, that would probably be who just like pops in my mind of like someone I'd like to express gratitude for, and so that would be why.
Yeah, he's amazing. I've been to I'm a fire walker. I've
nice. Let's go
with them, me and my wife.
Let's go.
What's the best advice for someone looking to do their very first co-living deal?
I'd say the best advice is going to sound so cliche, but like get someone that's done it specifically, if you can find someone that's done it in that area, the area that you want to do it in, you'll even have more nuances to the co-living game. The co-living game is nuanced. I believe it's the highest cash flow thing you can do right now that's stable. Like Airbnb, you have your ups, you have your downs, you've got your seasonality, but if you're looking for like, hey, stable cash flow over the long term, I think this is the best thing you can do. But I think you need to know somebody who's done it in that area, preferably. And so a lot of my work when I coach, to be honest, is like, hey, here's someone that's doing it in Boise. Here's someone that's doing it in LA. Here's someone that's I got a guy with 400 rooms in San Francisco. And everybody's like, oh, like California's so regulated, but they love co-living because they have such a big housing problem there. So like, go talk to him about that. And so I think a lot of that is, I think that's what I would say first.
Yeah. You have guys in Atlanta?
Yeah, of course. I just got a guy. I got a great guy. His name is Pascal. He's got 8. So he was managing all of his homes. He's got 8 homes there with Pad Split, and he just removed all of them from the platform and is doing self-management with my help, with my support.
Nice. And that was the next thing I was going to ask is if for that same person that we talked about earlier, if you were to advise somebody to get started, they wanted to get started, would you have them or suggest to them to self-manage if they had no coach? Say they weren't part of your program, would you advise that person that just wanted to start out the gate to self-manage or look for a Pad Split or a team like yours to manage?
If you are going to self-manage 100%, you will learn like literally a decade of my like mistakes and parking things and labeling things and what door locks to use and all of that. If you don't have guidance in that process, 100% do not self-manage.
Okay.
Because it's different. It's nuanced enough that when Johnny complains that Susie ate his peanut butter, and you're like, wait, how do I deal with this? Whereas like we've dealt with that. Like we've solved that problem in advance. And you're just gonna pay with so much time and headache and heartache that I wouldn't try to do that.
Love it. Good stuff. What is one mistake on a deal specifically or a business in general that if you had a chance to do over, you would take that do over?
A deal, a real estate deal or a business. I think the biggest thing that I say comes from Robert Kiyosaki. One of my favorite quotes from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is the deal of the century comes by once a day. And so I think that, beginner investors a lot of times will not get enough opinions from others on the numbers of that deal. So they'll be like, well, this deal looks good to me, but they forgot to add in like capital expenditures and repairs and vacancy and like some basic stuff that as experienced investors, you and I both know, like, yeah, the HVAC system is going to go out. Like right. You need to calculate for that. Like and your refrigerator is going to go out, your stove is going to go like, so we calculate for that. So I think a beginner investor gets too emotionally involved in a deal and has to have a deal. And they sometimes go and they find and they buy deals that end up costing them tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars. So, one of my biggest, this is kind of maybe a negative way to say it, but like one of the biggest reasons you should have a coach in real estate and why I've always had mentors in real estate, even to this day, is so that you don't buy deals that cost you money. It's not so much buying the good. It's like, yes, a coach can help you find the right deals, but sometimes just a coach saying, no, don't buy that saves you $100,000 in, just stuff that would have gone wrong or that you could have, foreseen.
Love it. Great stuff. What is the financial goal that you have set for your team for this calendar year in 2024?
500 doors.
500 new doors?
Yeah, so 500 doors. So
to get to 500.
Yeah, we have 3 companies. We got build, we got teach, we got manage. So for the management side of things, we want to get to 500 doors. So we've got to add 200 rooms. We'd add 200 rooms this year to our calendar. For the education company, we're trying to scale that pretty big. It's a pretty big financial goal. We're trying to do 12 million this year. That's about 4 or 5x what we're doing. So that's a huge goal. And I know you and I were kind of talking about how we're going to do that earlier, but huge goal, big thing that our team is really pushing for on the education side of things. And then
the manage.
Yeah. And then I'm developing some rooms. It's not really a financial goal, but we're trying to develop 100 doors, ground up development, actually build 100 doors co-living, because we think ground up is like the future, because you can put exactly how many bedrooms, exactly how many bathrooms you need. So we've got a couple plots of land already that we bought and we're like starting that, but it's a long ass process. That's crazy.
Crushing it, bro. I love it. Good stuff. If you woke up tomorrow with $500 million deposited into your account overnight, what's the first thing you would go out and purchase with that newfound money?
500 million. I'd get a Falcon 50. It's a 3-jet engine jet that's on my bucket list for sure. I'm actually looking at it right now. I've got a picture of it on my wall. It's a 9-seater jet that's just real beautiful. You don't need 500 million. I mean, you could buy one for probably 3 or 4, and then it costs about $1 million a year to run. So yeah, I got a buddy with a Falcon 50 I really like. I've got so that's the first thing. I guess I could go on. Let me just give you my wish list. But
no, there you go. I love it. It's a good looking jet. I love it. Good stuff. And one final one is, what would you tell the person that's listening right now that is looking to scale their business? Maybe they're struggling, did a deal here and there and just can't get any consistency. What would you advise that person?
If they're struggling, they don't have consistency. What's the best advice? I don't know, man. I think yeah. What comes up for me initially is just like set smaller goals. Because I do feel I'm in real estate coaching enough to know that, I get these people that are like, I'm going to buy 12 houses this year and they've never bought one. And it's like, well, that's a house a month. Like, that's a lot. Like, that's cool. Like, if that inspires you, go after it. But how about like in the next year, you get one property under contract and have a line of sight on property 2? Like, that'd be a huge win. So like if you can set smaller goals, or maybe you have a house and you're like, I just want to rent a room and I'll create $800 a month additional cash flow. That's $6,400 that you didn't have last year. Like, if you can start that small with some of these bigger concepts, it's so easy to see people on Instagram or have conversations with guys like you, Brandon, or me, and you're just like, oh, I want to do all that. And it's like, no, you don't need to do all that. You need to start. Everybody starts with one house. Everybody starts super slow. And I'll say this because one of my biggest, I'll end with this, but one of my biggest real estate mentors tells me all the time, he goes, Sam, if you want to get wealth fast, go build a business. He goes, but you can build wealth fast and it's going to be more risky because businesses fail all the time. He goes, if you want to build wealth slow but steady, he goes, it's real estate. And real estate is a long, slow, you feel like you're not making any progress. And then it starts to accelerate near the end as the hockey stick goes up. So if anybody's in real estate trying to accomplish big goals, like, just recognize it's a slow, tough, painful grind for many, many years. And it accelerates because you get all these bonus, you get appreciation and depreciation. All these things start to stack on top of each other. But after a while, not on month 1 or 2 or 3 or 5, not even year 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So you really got to just be in it for the long term.
Love it. That's a real good gem, and setting smaller goals. I really love that. That is super helpful. This has been great. I want you to now share with us how folks can follow you, how folks can follow along with your journey, as well as where they can go to learn more about the management company, the coaching, and just generally, what's the name of the team? And I know we've talked about Pat Split. When they look for your organization, what are they looking for?
Yeah, man, I think thank you for the opportunity to share this. Thanks for the opportunity to be on. Thanks for the insightful questions that you asked, Brandon. This was fun. The best thing people could do would be to just reach out to me on Instagram. I'm really active on there. My team's really active on there. So it's just at Sam, S-A-M, Wegert, W-E-G-E-R-T. So at Sam Wegert is on Instagram. Or if they're interested in learning more about co-living, everybody kind of comes into my world in a really simple way. They just join what I call a 5-day challenge. And so they jump on, I do a free training for an hour a day for 5 days, once a month or once every other month or so. So I'm launching one next week. Well, depending on when this releases, I don't know if it'll be next week, but I'm launching one the second week in January. And they just have to go to scaleyourrealestate.com. So www.scaleyourrealestate.com. And that's where they can get on the waiting list for whenever the next 5-day challenge is. And that 5-day challenge is where I deep dive into how to find a property, more on regulations, how to set your goals for financial freedom, and really just walk people through a journey where at the end they feel certain and confident that they can get to financial freedom through this model and they know how to do it. And it's my way of just adding a ton of value to the community. Of course, there's an offer in there. If people want to continue on and coach with me, they can. They don't have to, but they can. And so that's strongly how I would recommend everybody get started.
Good stuff. Love it, love it, love it. And just because I wanted to know just the name of the organization. You guys the
Scale Your Real Estate is the coaching organization?
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably how most people know. The management company is called Life Door Rentals. So people
Life
can
door
go
rentals.
check that out as well.
That's
But,
kind of what I was curious
yeah.
about, life door rentals. I like that.
Yeah.
And man, this has been great. I've learned a lot. You kind of got me itching to want to go after one of these properties myself.
Let's go.
So really, really great stuff. I learned a ton, man. This has been great. By the way, guys, while you're at it, when you're online, head over to sendmoreoffers.com. That's sendmoreoffers.com. There's nothing there for sale, just a bunch of great information, show notes, links and connects with some of the best guests, as well as myself. And especially if you're here in Atlanta, would love to connect with you here live. Maybe we can get some deals done. Sendmoreoffers.com. Sam, again, this has been incredible. I'm sure I'll see you at one of the next mastermind meetings, and you're just, a few miles up the road. So I come through Charlotte once in a while, and maybe we'll have to catch up for lunch or breakfast or something.
Dude, 100%. Anytime you're in Charlotte, please let me know. Yeah, coffee on me.
Awesome. Good deal. Guys, as always, send more offers, do more deals. Till next time, peace.
That's all for this episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show with Brandon Barnes. But we know you're craving more knowledge to get yourself ready for that next deal. To schedule a call with Brandon to learn more about how to do deals consistently without seller appointments in a repeatable way, be sure to visit us at sendmoreoffers.com. And be sure to tune in for the next episode of the Send More Offers Real Estate Show.